2. Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. This conversation has been a long time coming. I think I reached out to her. Time means nothing anymore, but it's got to be years at this point because I've read so many of her articles over the years, and I'm such a huge fan of hers because I always learn something that I didn't know, and I really geek out about that so hard. And her articles, I mean, you know, I've read so many articles that she's done on Beyonce alone that I freaked out about, but also Summer House, Martha's Vineyard, reality shows in general, pop culture. But she also has one article that just came out yesterday in a very well-respected publication, Time Magazine. And the title of this is called Love Island USA Marks a New Era of Toxic Fandom. And I thought, what better person to have on to have a conversation about reality shows and fandom and coming off the heels of Love Island USA Season 7 and kind of where do we go from here and how this impacts other reality television from Bravo to Peacock and so on and so forth. So without further ado, the very talented Taylor Crumpton is with us. Taylor, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be a first-time guest. The stars aligned for me to be here, so I'm so excited for us to get into it today.
And by the way, you guys, we don't usually do this here. We had a pre-conversation before we recorded this hours ago. And I was like, I wish I could just be recording this conversation. I was geeking out so much on the conversation. So that always bodes well. So hopefully I don't screw this up. So first off, just to explain to the folks, what is your background before you got into writing? Because I found this fascinating.
Yes, I started writing as an undergraduate student at Abilene Christian University, go Wildcats, for Teen Vogue and their news and politics editorial. So by day, I was a social work student, and by night, I was a freelance news and politics contributor. I stayed with Teen Vogue throughout the entirety of my grad school program, and my first job out of college, which was working with homeless age youth in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I always had a passion for writing. Initially, I found writing to be an extension of my social work practice. So I used writing as a form of advocacy, which has now over time evolved into a cultural critique and commentary. So I am a social worker by training. I am a culture writer and cultural critic, but throughout the years of journalism that I've done. And right now, my primary editorial home is Time Magazine. I'm a columnist for their ideas section. So think about that as the equivalent to New York Times opinion section, where I write about music, pop culture, reality TV in particular, Love Island USA Season 6 and Season 7, from the perspective of a Black woman, but also this season, seeing how this shift in fan behavior is setting some very scary precedents of what could potentially happen in the future of unscripted television. And that response has been so great that I'm actually writing a book on Black women in reality TV for Amistad Books. So I really live, eat, and breathe unscripted television.
I mean, that is so amazing, and I'm so happy for you, and I cannot wait to read that book. Very, very cool. Watch out, Sheena Shea, by the way. We've got a new book around the corner from Taylor. You know, it is interesting about cultural commentary on its face. Why do you think pop culture is a great lens in which to do that?
You know, often when I was in grad school for social policy, my professor would say policies inform our lives. To apply that to pop culture and reality TV, that is the greatest, you know, experiment in depiction of what's going on in culture and society. There's a reason why reality TV and pop culture is studied in the Ivy League and in higher educational institutions across the United States and the world. I would say this is the one genre that is accessible to everyone. It's on network television, it's on streaming services. And in terms of diversity and racial diversity, gender diversity, queer diversity, unscripted TV has always had a higher range of giving more, you know, insights and experiences into the everyday American. So to be quite honest, scripted TV looks to reality TV to see how the country is feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you put it like that, because also I'm always looking for somebody that has better use of language than myself to be able to explain these ideas, and also to show people that we're not idiots, the people that watch these shows, that these shows can hold more. You know, it's like walking and chewing gum at the same time. They can be hysterically funny and it can be really dark comedy, but at the same time, there is a social truth about this. And I don't think we have to be scared about that. I think we can lean into that and be excited about the ideas generated. Now, I will say, to the point of your article, there is a toxicity to that. And I think it's like, I always say that with great power comes great responsibility. And you can joke about that in terms of reality. But what I think reality shows do more than any other genre is that it is so dependent on second screen technology and us, the fan base. And sometimes that power is overwhelming, and it comes out like, because sometimes we are not delicate with it, it can come like an anvil full of hate, because we are reacting to something so immediate, especially with Love Island, that is edited within 7 days of actually happening, as opposed to Bravo, which is a 10-month leeway there.
Mm-hmm. I think even in terms of like fan interaction, live tweeting was started with Shonda Rhimes and Scandal. Like inherently, the participation between the fan, the viewer, the consumer, however you want to call it, started with a Black woman leading a Black, television show on a network television. Like,
I mean, that was an ABC show, and that is, you're saying that is the point, that is the start of all of this.
That is the start of how even, there's this documentary series that was released last year, and it covers the history of Black Twitter. It was released on Hulu, and they have an episode where they talk about how Twitter itself, and they have Black employees who worked at Twitter, speak about the impact of people watching Scandal and using Twitter in its early stages to like interact with it. That has set the standard for how all of us in America interact with social media, TV, and other people who are watching the same show. So when folks are like, oh, like America is really obsessed with Love Island USA, the show can't be this good. Inherently, we've been doing this for over a decade. This is just ironically during the summer when we're supposed to be outside, and all of us are watching this in bars and clubs and everywhere else.
Yeah, no, one of my nerdiest facts was that the day that Twitter premiered was also the day that Real Housewives of Orange County premiered. Now, we didn't use it to completely bash Vicky as we would have done, 18 or 19 years ago when it first came, in its infancy. But I always find that fascinating, because if you think about reality stars now, there almost needs to be a boot camp trying to explain to new people joining reality television. And to, your point also, I think future Islanders need to be sat down and explain the power of social media and what to potentially expect and guard from, and also to police their own behavior, because obviously we've seen with Sierra, but not just Sierra. I think Austin this season as well, Hutta a little bit. There's been a lot of fractions with this cast in general and how they've used social media in the past. I mean, how do you think Love Islanders specifically, and then trickling down to other reality shows, should people joining these casts, how should we police their behavior online?
What stands out to me the most about season 7 of Love Island USA, and Ian Sterling said this in an interview recently, how this is the first cast of Islanders that is predominantly Gen Z compared to any other generation prior to it. And I'm someone who is technically called a zillennial because I was born in 1995. So I remember us going into 2000 and thinking that we were all going to die. We're a very interesting bunch, the Pocket Bunch. But for Gen Z, they're referred to as like the first generation to grow up alongside the internet and social media. So every single Islander grew up with a digital footprint, and that is not applicable to the housewives or even older, reality TV star talent. The blessing and the curse of that is that you can go back and see how they've evolved and grown over time, like we all do. But unfortunately, us as human beings know part of that growth and evolution means that there is something out there that you have said at a point in time in your life that has some type of cultural and societal impacts, as we've seen throughout many of the Islanders, whether that was them when they were younger, whether that was them in the past 24 to 72 months. And that is the trickiest thing. And I'm very curious to see how production companies and casting are going to do, since reality TV is getting younger and younger by the day. Do you inherently eliminate the whole entire digital footprint? Do you try to use the show as a platform for them to showcase like growth? I think I put in my piece, there's like this difficult balance between accountability, cancel culture, and toxic fandom. And that's what we're currently seeing right now in these post-Villa conversations of season 7 Love Island USA.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is dead on. But, in terms of your digital footprint, what I think is so interesting about this season, specifically about Love Island, is that almost the prize isn't $100,000. Mm-hmm. The prize is these are people now getting millions of followers so rapidly, becoming famous at such a speedy rate that is that's rarefied air that nobody teaches you how to deal with. And sometimes I think that is, and that I think ruined the Bachelor franchise at one point as well, is that you were going on not really to find love or to be there for the right reasons, but to be able to sell tummy tea eventually. Now, we're so far past that in terms of Love Island, because as of us talking, we talked earlier this morning, Huda had 3 million Instagram followers. She's at 3.3 million Instagram followers. She gained 300,000 followers in the last 10 hours alone. And there is this video that Peacock released of the Islanders getting their phones for the first time and finding out their social media number. And they were shocked. I mean, I think Amaya was like, I can't believe I'm this loved, which I thought was so sweet and pure and everything we know from Amaya. But somebody like Huda, I think when you have that much fame, it really goes against ever having to do any sort of hard work on yourself, because you've already been rewarded for a certain type of behavior. Why take a long, hard look at any of your behavior if you're already so rewarded?
Of course. I mean, we're seeing that right now in the Bravo universe with Jax Taylor. Jax Taylor is...
I'm sorry, who? Who? Which, by the wait. Oh, sorry, it got put away. No, I was going to show you my anti-Jax Taylor pin I found from like 5 years ago.
Listen, people for years have been campaigning against him. Like, I received an email last month from the press department behind change.org, the online petitioning site, because there's a petition currently on their website about kicking him off of Bravo for displaying racist and homophobic behaviors, in addition to behaviors of interpartner violence. Back in the day, that type of behavior was awarded on reality TV. I have seen so many parallels between season 7 of Love Island USA and Jersey Shore. And millennials saying, well, if you couldn't handle Love Island USA, thank God you weren't alive to watch Jersey Shore, because you would have called for everybody to be canceled from the island.
I love that that's the, back in my day, I used to walk 3 miles in the snow to get to school. And it's like, back in my day, I watched Snooki getting the hit in the face on Jersey Shore season 1. You have no idea what you're dealing with.
You have no idea. And the way we approach pop culture and reality TV has changed. The viewer and the consumer is more educated. They're more aware. They know how the sausage is made. But also, I would like to bring one thing up to attention that's not really discussed about. The presence of subreddit pages that came of age during the COVID-19 pandemic, that has been used now by fans and consumers to critique and hold their favorite influencer accountable, because inherently they believe me engaging with your social media profile brings you money, celebrity, fame, and attention. So when you act out of, alignment or behavior with me, then I can use my power, as someone who is a follower, who likes your content, who buys your product, who listens to your podcast, X, Y, and Z, then I can, take money from you. I can make you change your behavior by critiquing you, by canceling you, by trying to hold you accountable, X, Y, and Z. And I'm curious, because this cast is so young, I mean, fresh 20s, they've kind of grown up of age, being on TikTok in high school, X, Y, and Z. But now they're going to have people searching through there and being like, well, you said this in 2016, so I don't think that you should partner with Coachella. I don't think you should go to Stagecoach, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I even think, to be quite honest and frank, production companies, casting, and networks do not know how to prepare Gen Z talent for this new consumer that has changed.
It is your pal Ryan once again to talk about the amazingness that is Quince. Listen, as you know, I'm not into chasing trends, but I am all about stuff, and especially as I'm on my health journey, that fits right, feels good, makes you look great, and it actually lasts. And that is why I keep coming back to Quince. I have used them now for over 4 years. Their lightweight layers, their high quality staples have become my everyday essentials. Look at the, if you're watching this right now, look at it. This is a lightweight, breathable, beautiful navy sports jacket that I'm able to fit in again. And it has lasted for 4 years and it is beautiful. Quince has the kind of stuff you'll actually wear on repeat, like breathable flow knit polos, crisp cotton shirts, and comfortable lightweight pants that somehow work for both weekend hangs and dressed up dinners. And the best part, everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. Go to their website, you will see. They do this by working directly with top artisans and cutting out that middleman. Quince gives you luxury pieces without the markups. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I use this. You need to be using this too. You go to the website right now, quince.com, and you are going to be walked through men's clothing, women's clothing, baby and kids, gifting. Everything that you need is right there for your choosing. So, stick to the staples that last with elevated essentials from Quince. Go to quince.com/so bad for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/so bad to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/so bad. And I'm on the website right now. I'm literally going to buy something right after I finish. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. Like, Alex Baskin is a man, I think, nearing or in his 40s.
Mhm.
And this is no shade to him, but how would he know what is going on like Twitch streaming or Kick streaming or Discord? Like, honestly, if you're running OC, Valley, Vanderpump Reboot, all of Beverly Hills, how is he supposed to know the direction the river is flowing, And also, when you're doing these shows, they're of a certain age range. Even the cast of The Valley is 40 or nearing 40. And then you jump to Love Island USA, which is, 25 and under for the most part. It's a whole different ball game. And I think one of my favorite stats that I was reading is that in compared to last season of Love Island USA to this season, there has been a 40% increase in new viewers.
Yes.
People that did not watch last season, 40% that never watched Love Island before. So they went into this not knowing what Love Island, this whole, when it works, it's kind of this romantic, fantastical thing that you go along on this, corny yet beautiful journey. So they didn't think anything was weird about this season. They just saw a mess and they loved it and reacted to it, which I find fascinating. But it is interesting because that is not the thesis of the show overall.
At all, but that happened, when I believe CBS bought the rights to Love Island UK and then brought it to the US. And folks were like, well, this isn't the show that I watch via VPN. You've changed it. Anytime a product becomes popular, anytime something gets into, conversations that bring in and garner attention, celebrity, and fame, they're going to tailor it. One thing that I wish I would have brought up in my Time magazine piece is season 7 was them trying to find their new brand identity. When I saw like the abundance of like new challenges and like twist on old one and the eliminations of ones from season 6, I'm like, oh, they're trying to differentiate themselves and try to tailor themselves to this brand new viewership base that they're getting in. And I think that also like causes tension within the existing fan base, because you have the old fans who are like, no, movie night, Casa More. looks like this. And you have the new people who are like, I have no idea what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
and the new people were like, I really like this. I talked to him. I really like what I'm watching. And so me saying, oh, we don't get movie night meant nothing to them. And I thought that was very interesting. I was like, okay, I totally get that. But then if you're tailoring it to a new fandom that is almost primed with rage in a sense by certain aspects of what they're seeing, and we're almost convincing ourselves that rage is entertainment, or it is entertainment in maybe today's standards, then are we going to tailor it to a point where next season we're going to like, the challenge is a knife fight, let's shank people in your sling. Where do we go from this? And the immediacy in which this production has to change on a dime from taking Sierra out and not really having any sort of conversation. Like Love Island is this, microcosm of, society in a very bizarre way. But at the same time, it does not platform any sort of real conversation. And we talked earlier about the eventual reunion. All of these real life things are happening about race, identity, sexuality, all of this, but there's no actual conversation about like what the consequence, Sierra being removed. There was no conversation between the Islanders about this or explaining. There's no tough conversations. Why do you think that is?
Well, modern day reality TV is still rooted in a psychological experiment from decades ago that has been now proven to be like ineffective. However, people still keep on doing the same show format, psychological ideology year after year, decade after decade, because it brings in ratings and talent. Like in the history of reality TV, every show is kind of structured to be this experiment. So if the experiment is season 7 Love Island USA, we have these young hot 20-year-olds in Fiji, one is removed. If I then tell you exactly how she was removed and the reasoning why, then it spreads throughout the whole entire village. And now my pool is ruined because there's been bias. I know that sounds like very terrible to compare Islanders to Petri dishes, but I think there is that concept of not wanting to influence the experiment, but also I believe that unscripted television networks are so afraid of being sued by talent. I'm thinking right now about Britt Eady's alleged $20 million lawsuit against.
I was just going to bring up Britt Eady, like right after you finished talking with Atlanta and not coming to the reunion. And she made her announcement yesterday that she is not coming back to Atlanta, which I was like, you didn't need to announce it. I kind of figured. But right, like Bravo and the production company has to worry about what they're liable for, and especially because of Bethany Frankel's Reality Reckoning, which seems to have hit some sort of pause. It is a different ballgame for studios and production companies.
It is. Even in Love is Blind, in the past 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of conversations about unionization. Unscripted TV and the talent that are on them, they don't receive royalties right. They cannot join the Screen Actors Guild or Writers Guild of America. They don't have access to those organizations that advocate to protect them. They're still very much seen as talent with lack of protections. So whenever you're bringing in conversations around race, gender, discrimination, sexuality, all of those social cultural topics that are like very at the front of mind, the production company and the network have to think first, is this going to cause us to fall out of favor? And what will happen if we incur a lawsuit? So I believe they choose to take this apolitical approach, which was evident in the messaging that Love Island had this season, where it's like the key word in Love Island USA is love. We do not condone any cyberbullying, harassment. And I know legal went through that with a fine-tooth comb because it's
but there was a rage about that statement in saying this is like, it's like, wait, the statement should be, I'm going to take you over my lap and spank you a couple times if you guys keep this. I mean, it was very pithy and like, woo. And it really enraged a lot of people because people said it did not go nearly far enough when Sierra is saying people are calling ICE on her family and people are getting death threats and all of this stuff. To have like a little placard that you put on your show, it doesn't go far enough. I mean, it's like walking a tightrope. What is far enough? How do these production companies still create a show filled with drama and sort of pseudo relatability and also be able to stay in charge of the product they're putting out?
It's such a delicate balance because, for example, the two instances you brought up, I do not condone and I do not believe any fan should then call government forces right now. You were currently based in Los Angeles. The whole entire world has seen what has occurred in Los Angeles. To call ICE on a former Islanders family, I believe is an act of inhumanity. The same thing happened to Emerald on Summer House earlier this season. People were tagging ICE in his social media accounts. That's horrific and awful. And I just don't think that is right. That's just in alignment with my political beliefs. However,
But Taylor, wait, Taylor, that's not just in line with you. I hope a good 99% of us realizes that isn't right. Like, I want to believe that the overwhelming majority realizes how out of pocket and insane that is.
I too would like to share in that belief, Ryan. Yet, to bring it back to Bravo, there are many different talent on that network and many different political parties and affiliation in the Bravo network. And the housewives have been under critique by fans who say that sometimes it's too left-leaning and fans who say sometimes it's too right-leaning. Depending on what franchise you love the most, we have seen housewives who have been at Mar-a-Lago, and we have seen housewives who campaigned for Kamala. So I think,
hey, Ramona, if you're listening, hi.
and listen, the way people came at Sierra for being a content creator for Kamala last year, and she fell out of favor with a segment of the Southern white conservative Bravo base, wild. But to bring it back to Love Island USA.
Sierra from Summer House. I want to,
Sierra from Summer House, everyone. My bad, y'all. My bad. These shows also exist in these political climates compared to last year, where there was the potential and promise of the first South Asian, Indian, African American female president, where the whole entire cultural zeitgeist and the brands and the companies, because remember, Lyft partnered with Serena and Cordell in a voter campaign to the poll. There was this push and this belief, and companies put money behind campaigns because they believed that this intended result was going to happen. That result did not happen. And then you have folks being like, well, there's a reason why Jake Paul's family now has an unscripted reality TV show on HBO Max. There's a reason why Bravo now has a
McVie
show
Dynasty,
A Family in Missouri. I do also want us to be like aware as viewers, if we have seen since the beginning of this year, the erosion of DEI initiatives and policies, the exiting of executives of color at these top companies and brands, then if you're a production company, the person who is the real head in charge, who we will never see because it's not Andy Cohen, is probably also like, we need to play it very, very safe before we become subjected to political attack.
Yeah, no, and also to your point, Andy Cohen, they always like, he's the head, he's a mascot at this point. Like, he is the mascot of Bravo. Mm-hmm. And I find it very, it's like, he is not the corporate overlord that everybody, like, he is not directly involved in most of the casting at this point. He is the executive producer on a couple of the shows, but not all of the shows, mm-hmm. Including Summer House and The Valley. So I find that interesting. Now, I also, to your point earlier about these shows being apolitical, and I think that is so naive in 2025, is that whether you, and if you're watching this or listening to this, folks, is that everything is political at this point. And I don't think that is a natural reaction for the times that we live in. And I think the further we fight about that, and I know it makes people uncomfortable, but I think these are really important conversations to have, because the anger that we feel, or the anger that I'm feeling, is spilling out into how we watch these shows. I mean, you had this great figure in your article that I loved. I'm trying to find it right now with the, what was the 78% of... I had it marked and now I just lost it. You know what I'm referring to, correct?
Yes. Right now, according to the recent polls, 78% of Americans have reported an increase in anxiety, and that's due to housing instability, financial stability, and political tensions. If you think about that number, 3 out of 4 Americans have experienced or are in the process of experiencing a high level of anxiety. Reality TV is literally formatted to induce heightened levels of anxiety, aggression, anger, rage. They also mess with an individual's perception of romantic relationships. So, if over 1.2 billion minutes have been watched of Love Island USA season 7, it is the number two most watched show in America. All of those factors result in this abundance of toxic fandom, of these horrific racially charged instances towards islanders of color, particular Black women islanders like Shelly and Olandria. And now we are seeing, oh, people may not inherently care about this show, but this show has become the scapegoat for all of America's bad behaviors. And unfortunately, they've been placed upon a group of young, hot 20s. Well, some of them were in high school during the pandemic. So when all of us were robbing Peter to pay Paul, I was an essential worker during the pandemic. They were in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I find that so interesting is that if we are so irritable and then we take that irritability, these aren't escapist shows anymore. This is a place in which we put our rage and our fear and our uncomfortableness with the world. And I know we're jumping all over the place, folks, but this is how I love to do it because I'm just so excited to have this conversation. But that's what I've been feeling lately a lot. And I will say, and this is such a duh, I am a white privileged dude. But I also have two eyes. I also watch these shows. I feel I am a feeling person, and it is very interesting to learn about things that obviously I didn't initially start watching these shows 20 years ago to learn about. But if you have eyes and ears, you eventually learn about that, and you either fight against that or you actually learn about something. And I think there is room to do both. I truly do. But my question is, does a show like Love Island, can it hold the weight of that inquisitiveness? Can it hold the weight of actually being able to learn and push forward to progress in some way? Or does it just explode into negativity and toxic fandom?
Here is, the question that I would love to ask all production companies and the powers that be. Compared to every other generation, Gen Z, their consumer behavior, spending habits, they predominantly support brands, companies, organizations that align with them politically and socially. So you just had a cast of Islanders who are representative of Gen Z. And through every single Islander who came on that series, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the fan reception to them is showing you a pattern and behavior that's going to increase over time. What are you going to do about it? Because they're not going to change. So how are you, the production company, going to work with that consumer base? Because between you and me, we have a warehouse somewhere of years and decades of our data and behavior. Okay, if you used to go out and party and post pictures on Facebook, they already got us, y'all. I don't think we're giving them anything new under the sun. It's more the new consumer base, this 40% that came, that Peacock has to understand. Are you then, before season 8, going to have Ariana Madix, the host of Love Island USA, go on the talk show circuit and podcast circuit and talk about all these initiatives that Peacock and NBC Universal has done to protect Islanders and to not condone racism and sexism and all these things from Islanders? Are you going to go the traditional route? Are you going to have Ariana Madix sit down with streamers, maybe those who are featured on the Time 100 most influencer content creators list? Is Ariana going to go on Giggly Squad? And maybe that can be an organic conversation between a network talent and two other previous network talents, and they can talk about their experiences. And maybe that's the way they kind of communicate to fan bases what's going on next. I think that the need is they're going to have to say something, because unfortunately the internet does not forget. So before season 8, everyone is going to bring back up, this is how Shelly was treated. This was Olandria. This is how they did Nick. Who's next?
Yeah, no, and to, by the way, I do want to mention Shelly and Olandria a second here. So what was the incident surrounding them and how they've been treated in terms of their race? What have you noticed and fans' reactions to them?
I would like to say, trigger warning. So for anyone who is uncomfortable with mentions of police violence, state violence, Black death, please, take a minute to go away and then come back. What really offended a lot of Black women Love Island USA watchers, is that whenever a certain section of the fan base perceived that Shelly and Alondria were being mean girls towards Huda.
Huda, yeah.
My bad, y'all. I am country. My tongue is my tongue, my voice is my voice.
No, I was literally saying I didn't. I thought you said it the right way. I was like, oh, Huda. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I never know.
By the way, I think I keep saying it wrong because like, is it Huda or Huda? I've said like the both. I've gone back and forth for these last 6 weeks.
Both of them. They someone, don't know if they're a fan or not, put Huda's face on top of the police officer who murdered George Floyd, and in the George Floyd body, where the police officer was kneeling on top of, which resulted in his death, they then put pictures of Shelly and Alondria. And Black women, Black fans of Love Island USA were furious. There has been so many racially charged remarks and online commentary that the people in charge of Shelly and Alondria's social media accounts have had to read and digest. That is horrific. And I think that was apparent in the response from a lot of Black women who watch this series and who have always been a part of the series DNA. And for Peacock to not address that, that was something that came up a lot in like the messaging, the apolitical messaging, where they're like, your Black women Islanders are being transformed into memes that are horrific and inhumane, and you're not going to say anything.
Yeah, that's, I mean, obviously a disgusting, and B, this is the kind of behavior that we're talking about where it is. And what's so interesting is that there is maybe a small segment of the Love Island USA fan base that is not chronically online. If I talk to my dad about what why I don't really go on Twitter anymore, I've tried to explain it to him where I'm like, Dad, I get literally scared. I get angry. I get scared. I see things I don't want to see. Even if I look at just people I follow, there's always something that will enrage me and scare me about where we're headed. And I've got to get off. So I decided, I'm not going to do Twitter anymore. And I didn't want to support Elon. But that is what's also infuriating about that too. And where production is on that tightrope is it's come out after the fact that Huda and Shelly were deemed mean girls in their response to Huda at the, I believe was it the heart rate challenge or maybe the mailbox? And it turned out they were actually upset at Huda for valid reasons because Huda had lied in certain situations and they edited all of that out. So it did make them look a little bit like mean girls, and that was the edit. I mean, that's wild that they actually did pseudo protect Huda in that moment. And I think with the toxicity around Huda from the Jeremiah situation, they were doing her a solid, but then it then painted Shelly and Alondria in a certain light that they didn't deserve. Like if somebody does you wrong, it's okay to be upset at them. There's a reason why. They weren't just being upset to be upset. Am I correct?
You are correct. That's a natural cue and response. When I covered season 6 of Love Island USA for Time, I wrote about when Serena and Cordell have their infamous scene at the dock, that she was typecasted as the angry Black woman stereotype by Kendall Washington and Miguel. And one of the reasons why so many Black women rooted for Serena and Cordell is that instead of affirming, the stereotype and the prejudice that are placed against Black women when we are emotional, Cordell was like, no, let me hear her out. I was in the wrong. Like, this is just her expressing her emotions. I don't feel unsafe around her. I don't feel that she's aggressive. I just want her to get it out of the system. Season 6 was so impactful for Black women because you saw Serena be typecasted and stereotyped and still be seen as a multidimensional human being deserving of love, deserving of a partner who is with her for her highs and her lows. And then also you have Janae, who I wrote about in the piece, who, very ironically, people online are telling her to get over how Connor treated her in the villa. But Connor's treatment towards her, we're rooted in a type of form of like internalized anti-Blackness and hatred. So like she is right to still feel a way about that because oftentimes Black women on the dating app are the least likely to be chosen. And oftentimes the non-Black women are chosen over them in front of their face. And the Black woman is made to be feel inferior, undesirable, like a man, not deserving of femininity, humanity. So when Kenny came in and really like loved her, you saw
Yeah.
women's fan base being like, this is so wonderful. This is so great. But if I can make a connection from Janae and Kenny to Nick and Alondria, you had that subsection of the Black male fan base who then got angry at Janae for not sticking with the Black man during the series. I've been seeing hints of that in like Nick Alondria, where they've been like, oh, so she just left Taylor for dead. She just left Jalen for dead. And it's like her speech about saying me choosing Nick was the first time I chose myself. Those are the moments where the audience are like, yes, this is what Love Island USA is about. It's choosing yourself. It's choosing to be with someone who loves you. And that is such a radical act, but that is lost and overlooked in this chaos of like negative, toxic fandom that we forget the sweet moments that really make the show great.
That is so powerful. The choosing to love yourself is an act of radical. I mean, that really hits me, you know, it's like, that's wild. But I will push back a little bit is that we may, I mean, the Nick Alandria was Stockholm Syndrome. The fandom made that happen. And this poor Alandria, we convinced her that she is in love with Nick. I feel like we did this lady, this beautiful lady, a disservice where she was like, I guess America saw something I didn't. And we made that happen. And I like Nick. I think he's a very funny young man. But I think Nick is just a horny young man. And she's obviously a beautiful woman. And I think Nick had just slept with Sierra the night before. She got kicked off the View. Like, so I'm sorry. I think it's great that Olandria is choosing herself, but I also felt America bullied her into that decision, and now she believes it. And I will say, by that last episode, I was like, okay, I kind of believe it too. This is cute. Like they recovered, the production recovered by the end, where I was like, man, I almost believe everybody's in love here until I actually start looking at the cold hard facts. I'm just being stupid there, you guys, but I do think it was Stockholm Syndrome. So, you know, why do you, and this is obviously a huge question, some people might hear this or something like that, and even talking about the Connor and like, you know, the is rooted in some sort of black hatred or something like that. Why is that threatening to somebody to hear that? Because I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. And I don't think that means Connor is this overall waste of a person that like, but why does that upset people? Why does that rile people up?
Well, here's the thing. Oftentimes, people forget that when an individual internalizes any system of oppression, it can be racism, sexism, homophobia, biphobia, whatever thing you want to put there as a placeholder. That also robs them of humanity and agency and autonomy and liberation. Like when you continue to affirm these behaviors and say, oh, it's not really a big deal. It's not really a big deal. You're acting more like AI and a computer and inherently like not affirming and seeing someone's humanity. Like the most human act we can do is love. Like the most human act we can do is support people in their quest towards love. And also whenever someone encounters an obstacle, a blockage, a barrier on that way, hear them out and understand them instead of being like, oh, you're imagining that. Oh, that's not real. Oh, you're over exaggerating. No, that really impacted Janae's self-esteem and like how she felt in the villa. And when someone doesn't affirm whenever you've experienced a type of violence or harm, then you kind of start internalizing it and you're like, oh, I'm the problem. Something's inherently wrong with me. And then I need to fix myself. Maybe I don't need to be as bold. Maybe I'm not worthy of those things. Like it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I think that's what a lot of the Black woman fan base would like to tell, like the non-Black people who watch Love Island USA. You're seeing what it is to date as a Black woman in the United States. And there's a lot of moments where you're taught to see the potential in a suitor and a man at the cost of yourself, at the expense of yourself, at the detriment of yourself. And that's taught in Black girls since they're 0, 1, 2. There's a piece I wanted to write that never happened about how I believe that Olandria was moving towards Jalen and Taylor out of an act of racial solidarity. And for those who are not familiar with the dating practices of Black people, come here for a little second, I'll let you in a secret. Oftentimes, Black women are socialized and educated from birth to continue the maintenance of a Black family structure and home. Black women and girls are told at a young age, you will marry a Black man and you will have Black children, and your Black children will marry a Black man and you will have Black children. Right now in 2025, Black men are more likely to marry and date outside of their race. And even though Black women are the most highly educated and also the most fluid in terms of dating other races, are less likely to be married and date Black men. But there's still this cultural belief and notion, and almost kind of like an obligation to do this, to continue it. It's like an act of like Black pride. So when you have Olandria saying, choosing Nick was the first time I chose for myself, that's coded in decades of behaviors and narratives. And that's why she was so happy when she asked her mom, like, does this look right? It was very coded when she asked Shelly, does this look right? Does this look natural? Because to be honest, if you're raised in the South, and especially in the deep South, in Alabama, where she's from, that's not really right. That's not really the norm. It's different when you live in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago. Interracial relationships are a common norm. But when she's asking her mom, is this right? That is a little girl asking her mother, like, am I doing the right thing? When her mom was like, your dad is proud of you, that's when you saw her start to be really opening towards Nick, because she's like, I don't have to carry this anymore. I don't have to do this responsibility. I don't have to do this performance. So that's like giving a little bit of the history and background. Editors, if you still want me to write that piece, I'm down. But like,
well, now I have to go back and watch the family episode again, because I was sitting there because I loved that moment between her and her mom of like body tea, hair tea, like I love like face tea, like, yo, it's all working, and I loved that moment so much. And obviously I wouldn't think of the deeper ramifications of that. Does this look right? But my God, you say that and it gives this insane weight to that moment that I was like, man, now I want to go back and watch that moment again. That's now, God, now I want you to interview Olandria. But I don't, because I feel like you would push the Nick relationship further on her. So.
Not me being an agent of Nick Olandria Hive. I would
wait. Can you explain the Taylor and Jalen things? Those were her, which I was such a huge fan of Jalen, and just by what they edited, I thought I saw more chemistry with Jalen than with Taylor, obviously. But like Taylor's a very interesting guy, and he's a Southerner as well, correct?
I'm from Texas, and even though some people say that Texas isn't the South, I think Oklahoma is the Midwest. But I'm a lifelong UT fan, so that's just me saying it. But for the context, we can say Oklahoma is the South for this conversation only.
Okay. Well, I mean, we saw how Taylor, like, I sense no romantic chemistry between those two, even though I felt like Olandria was like, okay, this is it. Even when Jalen, I saw more chemistry. The Taylor thing was like her main priority, which still shocked me. And then obviously Clark got in there, and I still didn't see chemistry between them, but Taylor seemed to say, I like Clark way better than I do Olandria. Can you speak to how Taylor moved in the villa?
It's so hard having the name Taylor in conversations like this. The past 6 weeks have very been triggering for me, where I'm like, oh my God, y'all hate me? Not me. I think Taylor's presence in the villa, I would like to throw it back for a second. I believe around the Ulyssa conversations, and also Austin, whenever folks were looking at their digital footprint, there was a woman who alleged that she was Taylor's ex-girlfriend, and she allegedly shared texts between her and Taylor saying that whenever he returns back from the show, they're still going to continue to date, and that he's only going on the show to advance his modeling career. So there are some people who read that and was like, oh, he's just using this to, advance his modeling career, get brand deals, what people typically do to get on reality TV. So I think that was held against him. But I think also people saw that he was dishonest and disingenuous with Alandria throughout the entirety of the process. I mean, every time a bombshell came in, he would fold like a noodle. There was just a lack of a backbone. So I think whenever Jalen came in, people were so gun ho about him because he really seemed to treat her as a priority and with respect and understanding. And Taylor only started to date her and kiss her like a kindergartner whenever he felt threatened. Oh God, I don't want to see it ever again. That heart rate was awful. Jesus, season 6.
But by the way, he did the same thing with Clark. I never saw that man's tongue, and by the way, I did see way too much tongue this season with everybody. So it was refreshing, but it was also out of the norm.
Yeah, there were moments this season where it felt like I was watching softcore porn, and I was like, we do need to like put some parameters in place. Like
the fact that I'm still singing "Eat That Kitty" in the Hideaway, like this, I shouldn't be singing this song. Like, I mean, it's the song of the summer, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be.
But I think Taylor's just like disingenuous behavior towards Alandria. The only romance he had in the villa was with the boys. It was basically Rob and Aaron, but like instead of a duo, it was a trio. They were in love the majority of the time. So
that's why I said he had more passion for Nick than he did for any of those women, it seemed like. And I don't mean that in a gay way. I just meant the men were able to express love between men more than they were able to express love with the females at times.
And I think that actually was a beautiful highlight of the season. We got to see men love on other men in a way that was not frightening of their gender, of their sexuality. They were just good homeboys. And like, that's a highlight, I think, if we could say, of the season. But Taylor, I think people forget that we can watch you, as creepy as that sounds. Like, I do think that's like the blessing and the curse is like they've become so accustomed to the villa. And I think people wanted movie night, people who were still rooting for Taylor and Alandria, which I don't know why y'all would do that. That maybe if he saw himself, he would change his behavior. But I think he just got comfortable in being like, I really am only here until someone better comes in.
Well, I think also a typical male behavior, which I've exhibited many times in my life, is scared to have the tough conversations.
Yes.
Is scared to talk about your feelings because it's uncomfy and you're scared and you don't want to upset somebody, but it's also protecting yourself. It's a very selfish notion that you don't even realize in the moment. But I thought that's so typical male. And to your point about that beautiful moment between the men, so I'm assuming you're really into Jesse Lally's men's group as well from the Valley?
I'm into healthy, good, accountable male friendship.
You've not seen that on the Valley yet, have you?
No, I don't think me putting my hand on your chest and you telling me how it's just, that's not any type of impetus for change. That's just me saying your chest is really nice, or maybe you need to like go to the gym some more. There's no type of
Taylor, it's so offensive to me as a man that you can't respect my mandom and give. I mean, I think that is the most when you could put your hand on another man's chest and forgive him for all of his transgressions, even though they should be asking forgiveness from their women partners. I think it's a beautiful scene. No, it's just so ridiculous. So it's insane. Which, by the way, you do have a little more time, right? Because are you having a good time? Are you good? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I love this. Let's keep it going.
Okay, cool. Me too. I wanted to keep going. So listen, you did bring up Austin, and I said, like, what was interesting was, when he came in, I was like, oh, I'm Austin. I have a goofy vibe. And I was like, okay, I get. And then I was alerted about his TikTok repostings on there. Yes. And it really upset me, and it colored how I viewed that man from that point on. And I thought it was really egregious. And I try to be open, even though I am, if you listen to the show, I think you know where I stand on the political spectrum. Even though I don't lead with that, I have very firm beliefs. And I think a lot of the things that he was reposting was dangerous, conspiratorial, so many things. And I was a little confused I know why you yanked Yulissa, but then I don't know. I mean, I'm like, where is the line in who gets to stay and who doesn't at this point? And I thought, like, at this point, it's problematic island. And by the way, I think that's a fair representation of America in 2025. But I don't know where production draws the line of what is allowed and what isn't. The viewer, when we find out these things about characters, it does color, it's like Jax Taylor is one thing. We've lived with him since 2013 for all intents and purposes. But somebody that we're meeting in the first week, I wrote that guy off. I was like, oh, I think I know who this is. Now, is that unfair, or is that, is it bad producing on one hand because they know that stuff's going to come out in this day and age? Do they want him to be looked at as a weird villain? To most people. What do you think is behind casting somebody like that?
The question I asked at the top of my Love Island USA essay for Time is that this season did not only provide us an inside look into the dating behaviors of the US, but who deserves to be on reality TV. Because when we asked questions like that, when we're getting into, I do not agree with you politically, so I don't believe you need to be on my TV, which you could say is valid because the party which he seems to be affiliated with has been engaging in a plethora of behaviors that really do violate human rights law in the US and abroad. The inverse of that is you open a really scary door towards censorship, towards, if this was during the Bush administration, does that mean no Democrats are going to be on the reality show franchise? It's like, there's scary precedents when you're doing kind of like that. I don't believe he should be on here because he allegedly supports this political candidate. I hear you now, and that may be very popular and trendy in 2025. What if in the inverse in 20 years, it's like, well, I don't believe that this person who supports the Green Party and environmental reform or whatever, socially liberal issue, I don't think they should be on there. I think that's the scary thing, because I believe that casting, wants to have a plethora of diversity, and diversity not only in terms of race and gender, but political identities and political diversity. I think that's one way they're trying to keep on to the D word in this world of anti-DEI across the board in all aspects and areas of our life. And I think that's so tricky. That's really going to be, I think, conversations held within networks and for the entirety of this presidential administration. It's what is the line and what is too much? I think about how towards the end, I guess the fallout of Paige DeSorbo and Craig Conover, plethora.
Now we're really getting into it. Now this is going to really upset people right now. Paige and Craig.
Woo, woo, woo. But here I am yet again, doing it. A common remark and refrain was, oh, Paige learned that Craig was QAnon and does not,
oh yeah,
burn with her political beliefs. And that's why she broke up with him, is because he has transformed into this political conservative. Now, some people argued it's because that would be bad for her brand and her public, image and presentation. Others were like, oh, she's just really on her way towards being this lady of society in New York, where it's more popular and prominent to allude to an image of fluidness and openness and equality in New York City, however you want to slice and dice it. But conversations like that are happening. And though Andy never brought that up to both of them on Watch What Happens Live, that was happening in the Southern Charm and Summer House and Giggly Squad and Giggly Snark subreddit pages was, did she break up with him for political reasons? And, if so, that's weird because he was always friendly towards Sierra, and Sierra campaigned for the Kamala presidential election.
But Sierra, remember, we didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of it, but Sierra was always, listen, I like Craig, but my God, I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to be with him. Multiple times over 2 seasons, I remember Sierra that seeing she was good with Craig, but at the same time, she was like, no, I totally understand if you don't want to be with him anymore. We didn't really get into the specifics of why ever, but I found that very interesting because I can remember multiple occasions of Sierra totally understanding why Paige wouldn't want to be with him. But do we really think, you know, I almost feel like sometimes that's giving Paige too much credit, that this could be over something political when it could just be like, man, he would just really monologue. He was like Ryan Bailey on a podcast and it got really annoying at a certain time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I almost feel like, because I never sensed Paige as a political I sense Paige as very apolitical or almost privileged enough to be able to just focus on being funny, dressing, hair, like the kind of lives we that are aspirational still to some.
Yes, and I say this as someone who literally is working on another book, a illustrated retrospective of Beyonce for Simon Element, which is the publishing press that released How to Giggle. So, like, inherently, a part of me is a giggler.
No, but by the way, I want to also say I was on record years ago about not liking Paige. I hated the bed thing, all that stuff. And the last 2 seasons, I have come so far around on Paige. And I don't think I'm a giggler, but I read the How to Giggle book. I did read that book.
Yeah, I got it for free. Thank you to Simon Element, my publishing press. But to bring it back to Austin and Love Island USA season 7, even folks allegedly found Nick's voter registration record and form, and he's registered as a Republican. So they're like, I don't want this Republican to be dating this Black woman. The same thing.
Wait, Nick Alandria Nick is a registered Republican?
That is allegedly what people have found on his voter registration form. I feel like I'm at the Valley where I'm like holding the sign. Allegedly. So you did have these conversations that were occurring online where folks were like, we need to get Shelly away from Austin. Or they were folks where they were like, oh, maybe one of the reasons that Austin doesn't like Amaya is because she is the child of immigrants. Like, folks were putting 2 and 2 together. So I assume that NBC Universal and Bravo and the production company, actually, this is not a Bravo thing, my bad, y'all, will have conversations about like the data that they've seen online, because people now, like women especially, are no longer dating, and the ones who are dating, their politics have become like at the forefront of how they approach men. So it's like, if you are going to have a dating show, dating is no longer apolitical. It's no longer The Bachelor, and all of us know what Rachel Lindsay went through with that franchise. So it has been 5-6 years since she has said how she was treated by that franchise and what she has tried to do. So I think, I'm not saying that the same thing is happening with Love Island, but if they get ahead of it now, they then won't have a former Islander who is a fan favorite come out. Because as someone who works in the media, I have seen the little hints that Serena and Janae have said in interviews around production and storylines and their time on the villa. The worst thing a network can do is piss off a fan favorite who has more capital, social power, and political, and can really air them out for their abhorrent ways. So if y'all are listening, you have ample time to fix it before season 8.
Yeah, no, I mean, speaking of that, Beyond the Villa, Leah and Miguel are a part of that, and Leah has been highly critical of production, throughout this experience. And also, to earlier with the Connor of it all, Janae and Connor on the first episode of Beyond the Villa, that situation from the previous season is brought up. Now, I'm curious to see how that conversation goes, if it will be something of substance, if it will be something of weight. But I do find it interesting to explore those ideas further. But then also that goes to the reunion that was announced at the August 26th, I believe. And Ariana will be hosting, but it'll also be co-hosted now. And Andy Cohen will be co-hosting with Ariana, which I don't know how that will work. Like, do they sit next to each other? Is Ariana backstage? How that works. But I keep wondering, will Sierra be invited? Will they try to skip that important conversation? Is this the place to have an important conversation when we haven't had the conversation in the actual show? We've been having it here in these circles. What do you think? Do you think Sierra will get an invite?
I think it comes back to a topic that we discussed earlier around lawsuits and liability. It's tricky, right? Because the network knows why they pulled Ulissa and Sierra from the villa. That has been heavily reported from NBC News to Today, E Online, all of the content creators and podcasters who exist in the reality TV space. So they're not unaware of it. I just think it's what can they do in terms of next steps legally, and also will not cause them to fall out of favor with the fan base. I think that's what's having to go into the questions, because I always bring this up whenever I'm talking about the Love Island USA reunion. As someone who watched that season 6 one that went on for 40 days and 40 nights, and I never want to see cold Pizza Hut and coffee.
Oh my God. They tried to do product placement and the weirdest thing. And then they were ballsy enough to show an unedited scene by the fire pit, which shows you, I mean, if anything, it shows you why editors are needed. Cause it was like, here's the unedited thing. And it went on for like 12 minutes. It was so long.
It was like 15 minutes long, to the point where I was like, see, this is why we need story editors. Like, they do a good job. We need them. But they attempted to have a conversation about the sexually explicit videos of Kendall Washington that were released without his consent, which resulted in the breakup of him and Nicole. And in those questions, the verbiage, the rhetoric, and the language used was so light that if you did not know what they were talking about, you would have no idea why Nicole is having this blow up moment on Kendall. And that's what I'd be afraid if they invite Sierra, if they're going to be very light about these anti-Asian remarks that she used, then people will be like, well, what was the purpose here? Is this her redemption arc? The same thing that happened for, actually, they won't do that for Ulissa, because there's just, there's more history and legislation and activism, not to discount the years of activism that have continued to go on in the Asian American community, but that's the balance that I think they're doing. But also last season, Ariana wasn't in charge of her questions, and she said that on social media afterwards. So I'm like, is Andy the way of the network being like, okay, we're going to have a more experienced talent kind of help you navigate these tricky situations? But inverse, for those who are fans of Real Housewives of Potomac, fans have been asking for years for a Keke Palmer, a Z-Way to come in.
Yeah, I mean, is Andy going to have the colorism conversation, you know?
Exactly. And like, do you have someone else come in and like have those conversations? I actually think like that would be really progressive. Like, if the network understands like, we can't have this, let's have someone who can really come in and speak directly to this. Thank you so much. And then we will switch out. I think that feels more organic and authentic to me than trying to have Ariana or Andy try to explain like histories of anti-Asian like racism in the US.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm so curious. And I guess the obvious answer is that they probably won't do that. They probably won't do that. And they will just, you know, we'll get a toxic fandom about them not doing it. But at the same time, if they do it, that's also this double-edged sword, because they are probably not equipped to have that very important conversation in the midst of having a conversation about like, was it crazy to raise a baby on that last day? You know, like the lighter elements of Love Island USA. Okay, so that is but also I think Andy, I just think that is purely political too. Of Andy's like, that's the #1 reality show. You get me on there, like, period. Like, I want to be the face of Peacock and the face of Bravo, period.
Listen, what Andy has done, one of one. I'll give him that. But I also think it's maybe there has become such an investment by NBC Universal into Love Island USA. Ariana is now going to take over for Maya and be the host of Love Island season 2.
I know.
She's coming back for season 8. The Beyond the Villa is the first spinoff, probably if successful. Like, who knows if they will incorporate the other seasons of talents who were at that summer party, or if they're going to incorporate season 7. I think they're wanting to build this out, and they're kind of having Andy there as maybe like a sign of good faith that like, we are going to invest in this brand, but also he can bring in that older housewives fan base who maybe only watches the show like when their daughters or their children are home. Bringing in Andy does bring in that like legacy generational Bravo fan base. So it's bringing.
And just like Ariana brought in that initial Vanderpump fan base when she was at, I mean, it was just kismet in terms of, I mean, we've never seen somebody have this sort of glow up because of a cheating scandal. And, you know, obviously you have to be prepared and meet that moment. And she was, but how exciting that all of this happened because, I mean, something good did happen because of Scandival. I mean, that's truly amazing. Okay, so obviously, really quickly though, I do want to get your thoughts on the Valley because if these are young kids in sexy bikinis, we are past Vanderpump Rules with them, and these are like, you know, nearing 40s people in the Valley with kids, and I think it is a, you know, it's like scenes from a marriage or like a really dark 70s kind of relationship drama that I get such a bad feeling from every week. Like it's essential viewing, but at the same time, it's miserable viewing. And, you know, what is your take on the Valley thus far?
My Lord today, my Lord today, my Lord. The Valley is a display of what happens when accountability is void in the unscripted television space. And when also networks want to capitalize on a historic moment like Scandival, they wanted to capitalize on that. It got greenlit during that because also I read in a report either by Variety or the New York Times where they talked about the numbers for season 2 of The Valley, and they are like historic levels that haven't been seen since like the early days of Vanderpump Rules. Like they are pulling in 2013, 2014 monocultural numbers. Bravo had a 4-year consideration Emmy campaign for The Valley. It did not get that nomination, but they're making so much money off of this. But the thing is, the same person who may have been wanting to party with Jax Taylor in 2013 has evolved over time. And they're like, I don't think this is like an example of like good morality. I don't think this should be like platformed anymore. And I think the network needs to start preparing young talent like right now. Like conversations need to be had with Next Gen NYC, Southern Hospitality, Summer House,
or even the reboot of Vanderpump Rules that is skewing younger.
We cannot be your only employer for the entirety of your lives. You will not be in Love Hotel season 2 Tom. We cannot continue to create programming for, it's like the person who won't leave their parents' house. It's like you went to undergrad, you went to grad school, you got a job, you have the savings, you're gonna be all right. And that is showing to me that like the existing talent, with the exception of like Kirsten and Luke, are bringing down the show. Jax is bringing down the show. Him taking up all the space in the room. I want to hear from Jasmine and her fiance about planning an interracial gay wedding.
I love Jasmine's experience earlier in the season when she talked about, you know, lesbians are usually looked at like the fetishization of, I never had thought about that, of like the way we're looked at of just as like this, you know, two girls kissing, you know, and I was like, I never really stopped to think about that. And I thought that was so interesting when she mentioned that in one of the episodes. And I was like, oh my God, of course. I can't imagine what that's like to go through your experience with the love of your life, having to experience of like, hey, kiss her.
That part, like those are the conversations that like, I think the audience wants to have. Well, I would like to know how Zach, a white man from Kentucky, is like having a relationship with this like Chinese man who is an immigrant. Like those are these organic, you know, DEI diverse initiatives that the network was trying to do in 2020 that are so authentic and genuine and real. I would love to lean into that. Heck, have Jesse in that man with those scary eyes that reminds me of Jody from Real Housewives of
Aaron, the honey man.
Yes, the honey man. I'll take that lighthearted, you know, that can be as much drama than I can have. Making this all about Jax is killing all the stories that we really care about. And I think they're trying to do this like, well, he was so profitable for so many years. whenever Jack starts to be unprofitable, whenever he starts to make the network lose money, I do believe they will let go of him. But I would rather them do that now than wait one more season where fans are just so
But
disinvested.
But Taylor, to your point earlier, I think then you or they might be scared of legal jeopardy at that point. Bravo has been sued so many times or in talks, from Brandy Glanville to, Bethany Frankel to everything that even though, I think Jack specifically is aware because he has gotten fired from Vanderpump Rules in the past, even though he said he quit, he got fired, and there were reasons behind it that I think he would try to sign up for a reality reckoning, even though his own behavior is what got him to this point, period. And so I wonder how many of the, like I said, keep him on as a friend of, or like act like he's still part of the cast and then just edit out all his footage, because I would almost be scared for Brittany if he did lose this job, because I think he would be more aggressive towards Brittany if he lost this job and blame her. But yes, I agree completely. I just don't. Also, with the Dodie thing, I think what I really like about it is that you've seen Dodie change from 2013 to now, where you haven't seen Jax change. And also to that point, we didn't know Janet in 2013. So we don't really know. We don't have something to root for yet with Janet. I guess we have a starting place, but I don't think the Valley's going to last 12 seasons. I don't think it can. I think it'll burn way out quicker than that.
Also, we're no longer built as a society to have 12 seasons on air. We're very much like maybe 4 or 5, and then like you gotta leave. Even Quinta has been like, yeah, we do have like an end date in mind for Alba Elementary because also we want to do other things outside of this show. So the Valley, I kind of felt this way with Roni, where like either they lean one way and then they're like, ooh, we were not expecting this, or like, we did do this and then wow, we weren't expecting the positive response. Right now they're riding on a high, but in order to ascend, they're going to need to get rid of Jax. They're going to need to get rid of Jax in order for them to ascend, because if not, if we're going to redo 2009, it's just going to falter.
Yeah, you have to make those tough decisions to have the overall health of a product. It's like sometimes what's weird in the immediacy is good overall, and you just don't see it yet. Now, you've probably really upset Justice for Jax Taylor on Twitter with those comments. Did you see that Twitter account?
I did.
Can you do some like deep reporting about that and find out if that's, because I keep praying that that's just a bit somebody's doing.
You would think, and it could be, but we all know in the history of every single one of these franchises, 9 times out of 10, a fake account is being run by the talent or has a partnership with the talent. And
if Jax knows how to use AI, oh, we're so screwed. We're cooked.
We are as a nation. That is.
So as we wind down here, even though God, I hope you'll come back on. I hope you'll make this a regular thing, because this has been so delightful and insightful. Because but OC just premiered, and I always find it funny. There's a storyline about like a blogger, getting in the mix with all of these housewives, and I always hate those sort of storylines, because I always like to think that I'm out here and you're on my TV, and I don't I don't want to mix chocolate and peanut butter. I want that to be I don't want, like my worst nightmare, even though I joke about like wanting it, I would never want, a clip of this podcast to be on OC. I would never, I don't want that,
Yeah.
And it's like, do you have that same feeling when, if all of a sudden Southern Charm brings up a Taylor Crumpton article and they all go around, what is your thought when it kind of infringes on our actual worlds?
I'm an old school journalist, meaning that I believe that journalists are meant to be read and not seen. I understand that because of the current pay structures of journalism and the way it is being defunded every single day, that some journalists have taken up content creation as a stream of income. Into that, hey, I'm not going to pocket watch whatever you can do to pay rent in this economy. But I think what's scary is when a journalist, a podcast host, a blogger then takes on the attributes of the people that they are interviewing and or covering, when you start to think that you are the talent and you want to be a part of the story and the storyline, it gets very unethical and immoral, because then you're losing any type of objectivity. You are just inherently trying to be in the mix when we're supposed to be outside. I don't think that you can be a good critic or reporter, whatever title you want to have to say, like in this space, if you're actively in it. Like, I think it to be friendly, where, like, you know, they might like your post or retweet. I think that's fine. But saying, oh yeah, one of them invited me to their birthday party, is like,
What?
oh no.
Yeah.
Clearly it's not a friendship. A friendship is something that's very organic and built over trust. If I just were to DM someone and be like, hey, I'm a really big fan of yours, whenever you need a story, I got you, that means that, like, whenever you stop serving me, or whenever I think I've surpassed you, then I will get on whatever said show and then bring you down. We already saw Monica. We don't need that anymore. And I think it's scary when talent doesn't want to be authentic and genuine, and they play dirty and hire people behind the scenes. That also shows to me, to be very critical, that you're a lazy reality star. I think it's a lazy reality star move to get bloggers involved in something. Back in the day, they were flipping tables, they were whooping it up, okay? They were having real authentic conflict and tension. Be authentic. Stop hiring people to create tension.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes more of a competition reality show instead of a show about these women's lives. You know, it's like these women's lives have become something that is lived online and with a fan base, instead of actual things and experiences that are happening within this quote unquote friend group, which also then highlights that these friend groups are now casted out, you know, and not natural in any way anymore. Okay, and finally, we've had this really intelligent conversation, which I've tried to drag down so many times, and you refuse to let that happen. But when you watch something, you know, is there something, like, I'll watch some 90 Day Fiancé shows, and it's just for me. I'm not going to talk about it on a show. I'm not going to. Do you watch anything without a critical eye? Is that even possible for you? I mean, is that just naive? Like, is there something that you ever watch that you can shut your brain off?
You know, it's so funny. I didn't start thinking about reality TV through a critical lens until I lived in Brooklyn. I initially lived in Flatbush, and then I lived in Bed-Stuy. And this was around the celebrations when hip hop turned 50. And I was on deadline throughout the entirety of the summer on back-to-back pieces. It was me in this, like, sublet apartment in Flatbush, having to write like 3,000 word articles on, like, the history of hip hop and the DMV and the history of rap in the Southern United States, like, just very deep, long form pieces. And I needed something to watch. And I had watched all of the Housewives, and that year was when Scandal broke. So I had watched Vanderpump Rules. And I remember the pilot episode of Summer House where, like, Stassi and them are in the Hamptons. And I was like, oh, what is this show? I was like, this is like so. And that whole entire summer, I like watched Summer House. And then I was like, oh, who's like Craig? What is this? And then I had to, like, go back and watch Southern Charm. And then I was like, oh, I think when I started watching Southern Charm, that's when the journalists in me were like, oh, wow. Like, that was a show I was like, oh, no, there's, like, some really deep historical, cultural, societal things. And I'm also a Black girl from the South. So, like, I know how that gets down. So I think that's when my brain started to be like, this is something. And then by the time I got back into Winter House, I was like, oh, this is just like, I can turn my brain off. I love reality TV. It just depends on, like, the show. And if I see something in the show where I'm like, I feel like I could write a piece about this. I feel like Spider-Man, where I'm like, my spider senses are tingling and I think I can write about this. But some shows I'm just like, void. I think, like, I tell my friends, for instance, they're like, oh, do you want to go to this concert for your birthday? Because I turned 30 on July 31st. So my friends are trying to find things for me to do. And I'm like, hey, y'all, I used to cover concerts professionally for work for years. So when do I go to a concert, my brain starts analyzing every single song, choreography, lighting, stage direction. Like I feel like I'm at work. So what brings me the most peace is walking, hiking, and being at my favorite dive bar. I'm very much Ernest Hemingway, where you will find me in any city in America with a tequila soda in the back, baseball cap on, chilling. Like that is
Yeah,
my
yeah.
safe decompression space.
Well, Chicago's got some good dive bars. I
I
will say that.
I drink Malort like it's water, baby. It's
Oh my God! I had a horrible. I was my best friend is lives in Chicago, and he took me to one of these dive, and I had never had Malort before. This was like 3 years ago, I think, and it was. I felt like I was invincible for like a solid hour, and then really bad day the next day. But my God, that was a fun night. Chicago has some amazing bars and amazing gay bars. I've been able to experience like both, and it's just I think Chicago's an amazing town. Also, when do these books come out? Like, I know they've been announced. Also, I'm a huge fan of your work with not with but on Beyonce. I'm a huge Beyonce fan or stan or whatever we call it in 2025. And I always I love when you write about Beyonce, and I always learn something. When do these books, when it's speculated to come out?
Yes, Beyonce is expected to come out next year. For those who have aspirations of being an author, I'll give you a little bit of this. Whenever you finish the writing of the book, it does have to go through legal, just like all these shows have to go through legal. So sometimes that can like adjust in the schedule. So Beyonce is supposed to come out in May of next year, depending on what happens outside of what I can do. It could be like fall of next year. Obviously, I will send you a copy, and I would love to come back and talk about that.
Anytime.
Girl, Please, I believe will come out either like late 2026 or 2027. That one is going to take a little bit more time because reality TV really didn't start getting academically reviewed and talked about like until like 10 years ago, and especially Black women in there, like the scholarship's not there. So that one I would like to say like 2027, but I'll definitely be back on Singular Podcast.
You're always. I mean, I'd love to make this a regular thing, and I just thought of this, and I know you're way younger, so you might not have seen this, but the first season of The Real World, which was where I started falling in love with reality TV, there were there were intense conversations between Julie and I believe Kevin was his name, and I thought how interesting is that we were having those tough conversations when, as a kid, I was watching The Real World. And we've seemed to steer a little further away from those tough conversations, which I find interesting, is that we almost had it right in the beginning. I don't know, that just thought popped in my head. Would you disagree?
No, I would agree. In the beginning, even for folks who have read from
Cue the Sun?
Cue the Sun, I love her as well. I have another book in there where it talks about how in the beginning of reality TVs, they were meant to be doc series. Like, they were just literally supposed to follow people. Like that was it. So those conversations were organic. Whenever it became commodified in a product, then you have the introduction of all these other players and factors that are, oh, hey, Vicky and Tamara, y'all are going to have a sit down lunch. And like, you should bring up what she said last night. Like when you start having that human interaction, those producers, I think that's when we lost those conversations. But also, here's the thing, technically all of us are reality TV stars. If you have a platform, if you have a significant amount of following on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, X, Y, and Z, and you have a number of people who follow your every move, social media actually created the reality TV star. So to be honest, both you and I do have followers who are keeping up with us. I think it's ironic that content creators now have channels on Instagram and you can watch their channels, and like we have vlogs. So I think,
I watch TikTok, and I follow like 15 separate goofballs in their life. I don't even know how I found them. And now I'm addicted to like seeing what they did in the day, and I'm like, these are little reality shows that nobody's producing.
Exactly. But because it's made by them, edited by them, produced by them, I think those are where those real conversations of reality TV in the 90s are being had. When it's like, if I can just pick up my phone and talk about everything in the world that I experienced as a Black woman, you're going to get all those conversations. But that's because I don't have other people in my ear telling me what to do. So I'm curious. I'm really, curious to see Beyond the Villa. I think Beyond the Villa is going to succeed where the original Vanderpump failed, because they're already starting to talk about like reality TV star fights over glam and spray tans. And
the Liv Kaler fight about the glam, I was like, well, they've got the banal kind of, like ridiculous fight. I wanted a little more conversation about the, insane amount of fame that they got so quickly, but I'm really curious to see the second episode and beyond. Like, I don't even want to judge it too harshly yet, because I want to see where it goes and if it is able to find that voice and the production behind it, so I'm really curious to see what happens with it.
Yeah, I'm going to put all my money on them. I really enjoyed the last season of Southern Hospitality. I've always cheered for them. So I do think there's some promise of like having real conversations. Like, I love the conversation between Nicholas and Lake about being queer and like
on Southern Hospitality. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that was like, oh, Lake feels that like she doesn't have to come out, that she can just do, which is such a Gen Z thing. Like, Gen Z doesn't feel the need to come out. Like, that was a very millennial thing where we're like, Mom, I have to sit you down and I have to make the Facebook status. Like, Gen Z is just like, I'm just queer. But
yeah.
Nicholas, that's like coded in this very unique Afro-Latino identity. And like, that's where I'm like, ooh, that's when reality TV shines. When it's like, that's it. That's the moment. So
or on Next Gen NYC, Seth Marks finding out about fluidity. That's where it shines as well. That's what I'm trying to get to. I want to be fluid. I mean, that's so bad it's good right there. A ridiculous moment of an older person finding out, and also just what a freak Seth Marks is and how much he wants to. I truly believe that this man wants to be fluid, and hopefully we'll see that on Next Gen NYC. Anyways, dude, I've taken up so much of your time. Thank you. This has been so long in the works, but Taylor Crumpton, I'm going to put all of her socials and a link to this Time article, because we got to go support. We want more articles like this. We want this conversation to continue. And is there anything else that we can support you with, Taylor?
No, this is great. I am at Taylor Crumpton across all socials. I have a monthly column in Time Magazine where I write about music and pop culture and just general things that are going on in society. I am going to tell you an exclusive. I am thinking about making a Substack. So all the pieces that I wanted to write about Love Island USA Season 7, I can do independently. I'm really thinking about like trying to do some coverage on Beyond the Villa. So like, if y'all like what I'm like reading and publishing, you can send me a DM and be like, yeah, girl, go with the Substack, or like, nah. So that's the only thing I'm
nah. Yeah, you just go, nah. We're good. Nah. No, I think we all want that Substack. So, in fact, let me know when that happens so I can talk about it on the show for people, or put it up somewhere, or put it up my Instagram or something. But this has been delightful. I really appreciate all of this time that you gave us today.
Thank you, friend.